Hey, how you doing? Corridors are grazing animals, which means that they're constantly eating. So they're always looking for something tasty to eat. And of course, your tank will have things in there that, they can eat. But not all tanks are able to support the number of cories that you might have. So you may have to feed them extra. So, what I'm wanting to tackle today is, should I be feeding my cories extra? And if I am supposed to be feeding them extra, how much extra should I feed them? It's very difficult to know because in the past I have had cories die of starvation. I'm pretty sure of that now. And it's not something you want to have happen to you, okay? Here is some footage of my 6 cories. They live with some cardinal tetras. And I do feed these ones extra because this tank is not able to support the number of animals that are living in it. Um, there happen to be some Malaysian trumpet snails and some bladder snails as well, which I tolerate because of the job they do for me, but I will talk about that in a second. So here you can see them eating because I've just put food in the tank. Usually they're quite skittish, and I believe that that is because I don't feed them properly. I don't feed them enough, I should say. So that's one of the ways that you can tell that your cories need more food. If they're not really comfortable in their tank, if they're afraid of you or something like that, it's probably because they're hungry. And when they're hungry, they don't feel secure. So they will be skittish. Um, the other thing that I use for testing whether my cories need more food or not is um, these aforementioned snails that I just talked about. So I use the snails as an indicator of whether I'm feeding my cories enough or not. And this I do because if you have Malaysian trumpet snails, you should never be seeing them ever. They will come out to feed at night. If you see them during the day, it's because you're not feeding your tank enough. So they will come out in the day, even though they don't like coming out in the day, they will come out in the day because they're hungry. And if your Malaysian trumpet snails are hungry, then you're not feeding your corridors enough. Okay? Now, if you start feeding your cories more because you're seeing trumpet snails during the day, then you will find that you might start getting algae, or your bladder snails will start to increase in number. So those are the 2 signs that I use. I allow my bladder snails to increase in number, or I allow them to live in my tank, I should say. And the way I keep them from being seen is that I keep my front glass very clean. No algae on the front glass ever. Clean it every day. And they will stick to the back glass only. Back and sides, I allow them to graze on. And I don't think I ever see bladder snails on my front glass, no. So these are the ways that I use snails to indicate how much, whether I'm feeding my cories enough or not. And yeah. Now, when I want to know how much, as a starting point, how much do you start off with? Like you just got some cories. You're not really quite sure where to start. So a kind of starting point that I like to use whenever I get new cories, because you'll find that different varieties will eat different amounts, right? And the numbers will be different, and um, things like the temperature of the water will, make them eat more maybe if it's a little warmer, and how much flow is in the water. If they're very active fighting a current, then they will need more food. What else? Um, yeah, and then the variety. So how big are they? How big have they grown? That will also help you know whether to feed them a bit more or not. Now, when I'm starting out, I have two kinds of food. I use the Hikari sinking pellets, and I use Hikari some kind of powdered food, granular food. So if you have granular food of any kind, you can measure it with a teaspoon, a spoon measure. Go steal one from your kitchen. Your mom or your wife won't like it too much if you take one, but you can borrow, let's say. So yeah, so we're gonna start out with a 1/8 teaspoon. Now a 1/8 teaspoon is granular, powdery or granular food. That should give you enough to feed 4 cories in one meal. So I'm recommending that you feed them twice a day. So 1/8 of a teaspoon should give them one session for 4 cories. Okay. So I give mine. I actually do it in pinches because the pinch has been standardized to be 1/16 of an inch. So a pinch is 1/16 of an inch. That means 2 of your pinches should fill the 1/8 inch teaspoon measure. So you should try to figure out whether your pinch is exactly 1/16 or not, and then you can always use that. You can use that as a measure, so you can give your wife or your mother back her measuring spoon. Okay. Yeah. So every day I feed my fish. Okay, not every day. Most days I feed my fish twice. So I will give them. I will make sure that the cories will get about so a pinch for 2 people. 2 people. Cories are people. Come on. A pinch for 2 cories. So that's 3 pinches, which should come out to be 3/16 of a teaspoon. 3/16 of a teaspoon. Okay. So 1.5 of those 1/8 teaspoon measures will feed 6 cories in one meal. Now you have to make sure that your other fish have enough food as well. So estimate. We're not talking about the other fish today. I might do another video about, all kinds of different sizes of fish, but today we're just talking about cories. So I make sure that in addition to what I'm feeding my other fish, I'm giving the cories 3/16 of an inch. That's not an inch, 3/16 of a teaspoon of powdered food. And then when I do the sinking pellets, I do the sinking pellets at night usually, and I give them 1 pellet per individual fish. So I have 6 cories in here, so they get 6 of those sinking pellets. Now, when I use the frozen cubes, I don't know if everybody knows what I'm talking about, but if you live in North America, for sure you'll know what I'm talking about. Frozen cubes of food, like bloodworms, cories. Oh, my cories love bloodworms. Oh my goodness. So when I use bloodworms as a meal, I will give them 1 cube for all 6. Because I find bloodworms to be, fairly heavy, fairly difficult to digest. A lot of fish shouldn't even have bloodworms because they can't digest them properly, I think. So my cories get 1 cube thawed out, and then I use a turkey baster, not the one from the kitchen. I've got my own turkey baster for fish food only. And I use the turkey baster so I mix the bloodworms with a little bit of tiny bit of water, and then I can scoop them up with the turkey baster and put them where I want them to be. Now, you might say, well, you shouldn't be putting food down on gravel, but don't forget that I have Malaysian trumpet snails, and they keep my gravel really clean. It's so nice. That's why I think everybody should have Malaysian trumpet snails, but if you don't like them, what can I do? I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to come to your house with a bottle of centipedes to put on your face when you're sleeping just because you don't like Malaysian trumpet snails. But, I'm just telling you how great I think they are, and if you want to take it from there, it's up to you. So that's how I feed my cories. So I'm going to go over again just how much I do. So this is not including the food I measure out for the other fish, okay? This is simply for cories only. In the morning feeding, I give them 3/16 of a teaspoon of the granular food. So I don't exactly measure it every time because I know that my pinch is about 1/16 of an inch. So I just give them 3 pinches. And then in the evening, I either give them 6 of the sinking pellets, so 1 for each individual, 6 sinking pellets, or they will get 1 cube of bloodworms. All right. And I used to feed them less before, and they got really, really skittish, and I couldn't figure out what. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe I'm not feeding them enough. So I started feeding them more, and they are much, much happier now. So I don't know, if you find your cories being skittish, maybe you could try that. I don't know. It worked for me, that's all I know. Okay? So when I put food in here, the cardinals will eat the cory food and the cories will eat the cardinal food, of course, but it's just the amount. I measure it out properly so that I know that everybody's getting enough food. That's the thing. Now my tank looks a little bit grungy. That's because there's duckweed on top, and when the light goes through, it makes the water look green, but actually the water isn't green at all. The water is clear. If you take a scoop out, you'll see that the water is clear. But I'm feeding my outdoor goldfish still with duckweed, so I need to have lots of duckweed because our weather is so weird. Some days, sometimes it will be warm for quite a period of time, and the goldfish have to eat in that period. And then it will go cold again, and then I can't feed them when it's too cold. So I just keep duckweed there because duckweed is very easily digested, so that if the temperature fluctuates, I don't have to worry about their intestines being rotten or something like that. Okay, so that's why the tank, it looks grungy, but it actually is not. It's just the way the light is going through the duckweed makes it look green and yucky. All right, so I hope that helped a little bit. So that should give you some idea of how much to feed your cories. It's just a starting point. It's not written in stone or anything. It just gives you an idea of how much fish eat, in my experience. And it's just something for you to think about. So I never want to be telling you what to do with your fish. I just want to be telling you some ideas stuff to think about. You know, maybe you haven't considered some of these things. And yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Okay? So until next time,